A brand new trawler off the showroom floor costs somewhere between $800,000 and $500,000. The man selling it will talk about joystick docking, integrated navigation systems, and pod drives that make the boat feel like a car. He will not talk about what happens when that pod drive meets a floating log at 7 knots. He will not talk about the software update that bricks the helm display 3 years after the warranty expires. And he will definitely not talk about the $80,000 repair bill waiting on the other side of that conversation. 2 slips down, there's a boat with gray teak and a faded name on the transom. It was there before the boat show started. Nobody looked at it twice. The asking price is less than a used pickup truck. That boat will still be crossing open water long after the shiny new one is sitting in a boatyard, waiting for a part that has to ship from a factory the owner has never heard of. This is the story of 7 trawlers nobody buys, and the industry that built an entire system to make sure you never look at them twice. Here's what that system looks like from the inside. Modern boat manufacturers figured something out a long time ago. A boat built to last 40 years only gets sold once. A boat built with sealed engine rooms, proprietary electronics, and pod drives that require a factory technician with a special laptop. That boat generates revenue for decades after the sale. Service contracts, software updates, replacement parts available from exactly one supplier at exactly one price. The new trawler isn't built to be owned. It's built to be financed, and there's a very significant difference between those two things. The boats I'm about to show you were built before the industry figured that out. They were built by people who assumed you'd want to fix it yourself someday, who assumed the engine should be something a mechanic in any port in the world could put their hands on, who built the hull thick enough that running aground on a sandbar wasn't the end of the story. 7 of them, counted down from the most overlooked to the one I'd put my own money on. Number 7 is the CHB-34. CHB stands for Chonghua Boat, a Taiwanese yard from the golden era of the 1970s and 80s, and probably the most overlooked trawler on the water. You can find a running one for under $30,000. People see a brand name they don't recognize and assume something must be wrong with it. Usually nothing is wrong. These hulls were overbuilt to a standard no factory would pay for today. Solid glass, a long full keel, and a big slow-turning propeller, tucked inside an aperture where a floating log can't take it off. You can run one aground on a sandbar, back her off, and keep going. Try that with a new boat on a pair of exposed pod drives and you're looking at a haul-out and a repair bill north of $15,000 before you've finished your coffee. Down in the engine room, you'll usually find a Ford, Lehman, or a Perkins 4236, both famous for refusing to die. The Perkins is a tractor engine at heart. Perkins built over 2 million of them, which is exactly why parts sit on the shelf at any diesel shop in the country. You don't call a dealer. You call a mechanic. The teak decks are the weak point. After 40 years, the bungs and the caulk let go. Water finds the core, and that's precisely why the price is on the floor. But a competent owner pulls the teak, glasses the deck over, and ends up with a boat better than the day it left Taiwan. The new trawler buyer spent more than a CHB, 34 costs on his electronics package alone. Number 6 is the MainShip 34 trawler, the first American-built boat on the list, and the one for the person who wants a boatyard close by. MainShip built these in Florida. Single diesel, simple as a claw hammer, and they built a lot of them, which means parts and know-how are everywhere you look. A clean one runs $30,000 to $40,000. Some of the older ones change hands for as little as $11,000. Here's the number that tells you everything about this market. The MainShip Pilot, same brand, same basic concept and sells, used for anywhere between $99,000 and $282,000. Same name on the hull. The only real difference is that the Classic came along before the boat got complicated. The single-engine layout scares some buyers who think they need 2. But a single diesel means half the maintenance, half the fuel, and one less thing to break at the worst possible moment. There's no joystick, no pod drive, no touchscreen waiting to brick itself after a software update the dealer charges you to install. There is a wheel, a throttle, and a boat that does exactly what you tell it. A person can learn every system on this boat in a single weekend. That's worth something, especially 300 miles offshore at 2 in the morning. Number 5 is the one you'll trip over at every marina in the country. The Marine Trader 34. Walk down any dock from Florida to the Chesapeake and you'll find one of these sitting quietly with an asking price around $40,000. The rough ones go for $15,000. People stride right past them because of the teak. All that gray exterior wood means weekends of sanding and varnish, and most buyers take one look and assume the whole boat is rotten from the inside out. It isn't. Underneath that weathered wood is a hand-laid solid fiberglass hull, thick as a phone book, built in Taiwan when labor was cheap and nobody had figured out how to make a boat thin enough to cut costs. The bones are bulletproof. What scares buyers off is cosmetic. What should scare them is the price tag on the new boat across the marina. Most marine traders came with a single Ford Lehman 120, a marinized Ford diesel, the same basic block Ford put in tractors and work trucks for decades. Mechanics call it the small block Chevy of the boating world. It turns slow, sips fuel, and with nothing more than regular oil, changes will run 12 to 15,000 hours before it ever needs a major overhaul. Parts are still stocked everywhere. A valve adjustment takes hand tools and an afternoon. A buyer picks up a sound marine trader for $18,000, spends a few weekends on the teak, and is cruising the Great Loop in a boat that owes them nothing. The other person, the one who financed $895,000 of new fiberglass, is still making payments on the depreciation. I think about that contrast more than I probably should. Number 4 is where the list steps up into a real live aboard. The Albin 36. 2 staterooms, 2 heads, a real galley, the kind of layout where 2 people can actually live aboard for months at a time without rearranging their lives around the boat's limitations. A clean one sells for around $45,000. A project boat changes hands for under $30,000. What makes the Albin different from almost everything built today is how it was put together. The hull and the deck were overlapped and through-bolted under a heavy teak cap rail, not bonded with adhesive and hope, the way a lot of modern production boats are assembled. There is hand joinery inside and out that would cost a serious amount of money to reproduce today. You can feel the difference the moment you climb below. A lot of them carry twin Ford Lehmans. If one quits in a tidal inlet, you still have a way home. Lose half your power on a single screw boat in a running tide, and you'll understand very quickly why the old-timers paid for 2 engines. The brochure boat at the show has a flat screen at the helm and a joystick for docking. It photographs beautifully, but that joystick runs through a control module that costs thousands of dollars when it fails. And the boat sits at the dock until the part ships from wherever the manufacturer decided to source it this year. The Albin has a wheel, a throttle, and 40 more years left in the hull. One of those boats is an appliance. The other one is something you pass down. Number 3 is the Willard 36. And from here on, these are boats that cross oceans. Willard Marine has built over 1,500 vessels for the United States Navy, the Coast Guard, and the Marine Corps. The company will tell you flat out that not one customer has ever reported a hull failure, not one. Willard built the first production fiberglass trawler yacht in this country. Before Grand Banks, before Krogan, before any of the names everybody chases on the brokerage sites. These are full displacement boats, double-ended on some models, with a hull so heavily constructed that a surveyor genuinely runs out of critical things to say. A Willard will sit at anchor in a 30-knot blow, rock steady, while the lighter production boats around it move in ways that make sleep difficult. You can buy a Willard 36 for somewhere between $36,000 and $45,000. The owners tend to keep them for life, which is both a testament to the boat and an explanation for why they don't come up for sale very often. When one does, the people who know what they're looking at move fast. Down below, a single Perkins turns slow and burns under 1.5 gallons an hour. Nobody buys these in large numbers because they're slow and plain. But slow and plain is exactly what crosses an ocean and brings you home. The Willard doesn't make promises it can't keep. Number 2 was drawn by a man who spent his career designing boats that had no margin for failure. Art DeFever was a California naval architect who designed commercial tuna boats, 80 to 180 feet long, built to run to the Galapagos and stay at sea for weeks at a time. He said he drew more than 3,800 boats in his life. When he designed a trawler for private owners, he gave it the same commercial backbone. Heavy displacement, deep full keel, wide beam, fuel tanks sized for open water. A solid DeFever 40 changes hands somewhere between $80,000 and $130,000. That sounds like significant money until you remember that a new passage maker with this kind of offshore capability, a Nordhavn 41, starts at $699,000 before tax and delivery. Most DeFevers run a big, slow-turning diesel sipping around 1.5 gallons per hour at 7 knots. Set that against a new express cruiser burning 15 to 20 gallons per hour to make the same trip. And the economics become very uncomfortable for the new boat buyer. The systems below are straightforward, enough that the owner becomes their own mechanic. You don't wait 3 weeks for a dealer. You pull the valve cover yourself on a Saturday morning. And that brings us to number 1. The Monk 36, drawn by Ed Monk Jr. from one of the great American families of boat designers. The people who really know trawlers hunt for these quietly. A clean one runs around $75,000. A solid older example can still be found in the 40s. Compare that to a new Nordhavn at over $1.5 million, and consider who actually got the better boat. Here's the part that I think catches people completely off guard. A lot of Monk 36s were powered by the Cummins 6BT, the 5.9-liter diesel. That is the exact same. Engine family Cummins dropped into the Dodge Ram pickup from 1989 to 1998, the legendary first-generation Dodge Cummins. Cast iron block, cast iron head, mechanical injection, no computer to generate fault codes, and around 40% fewer parts than the gas engines it outlasted. It is the truck engine that refuses to die. And somebody marinized it and bolted it into a trawler. So while the person with the new boat is waiting 3 weeks for a factory technician with a special laptop just to diagnose a fault code, the monk owner is out in the slip changing their own oil on a Saturday, using the same knowledge they already trust under the hood of a pickup. There's something almost poetic about that if you think about it long enough. Slow turning, simple, built to run for decades. That's why it sits at number 1. Now step back and look at what all 7 of these boats have in common. They were built before hull thickness became a cost line on a spreadsheet, before sealed engine rooms became a way to ensure only certified technicians could touch the machinery, before pod drives and touchscreen helms turned a mechanical system into something that requires a software subscription to maintain. The new trawler is engineered around a business model. Every system that requires a factory technician is a revenue stream. Every proprietary part that can't be sourced locally is a dependency. Every sealed module that can't be repaired, only replaced, is a guarantee of future income for someone. And it isn't the owner. The old boats were built around a different assumption, that the person who bought the boat would want to understand it, fix it, keep it for decades, and eventually pass it on. That the engine should be something a mechanic in any port, in any country, could work on without specialized tools or a laptop. Those two philosophies produce very different boats, and a very different financial reality over 10 years of ownership. The thread running through all 7 of these boats is the same. People chase brand names and pay enormous sums for the badge, when these older boats were built just as solidly by people who never figured out how to monetize the maintenance. They came along before the industry, discovered that a thinner hull and a sealed engine move more units off the floor. The new trawler is built to be financed. These were built to be owned. Right now, they're sitting in the back rows of marinas all over the country, dusty, overlooked, priced, as though something must be wrong with them. Nothing is wrong with them. They just don't photograph well. And in a market built entirely on listing photos and showroom lighting, that turns out to be the only thing that was ever separating a $30,000 boat from one that cost 10 times as much. The price difference was never really about the boats. It was about who benefits when you believe it is.